My name is Jason Nichols, and I'm the Director of Classical Programming at the Charleston Gaillard Center. The program we're talking about is Prince in Clay, Still We Rise, which was the first time the Gaillard actually did a major production and commissioned music. We commissioned 2 gospel pieces, one called Still We Rise and one called Prince in Clay. We wanted to do a commission to honor the African American music since the 1600s.
Children laugh, children play, then you'd see their handprints in the clay.
But good afternoon. I know a lot of people on the call, but I'm Kellie Lawson. I'm the marketing manager at the Charleston Gaillard Center. And if you don't know, because we did disseminate this pretty far out, we are a performing nonprofit performing arts organization in Charleston, South Carolina, committed to enriching lives through unforgettable experiences. So on behalf of our team, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon. And we are so excited to have this Q&A with Wycliffe Gordon, Janae Bridges, and Nathan Nelson. In 2019, if you were able to view the performance video, the Gaillard Center was so proud to collaborate with these 3 amazing artists on our first commissioned work, Prince in Clay, Still We Rise, a spiritual celebration. And we were lucky to answer some of your questions on the performance. So first, I just want to give you, I've pulled their bios. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about each artist. But Wycliffe Gordon is a renowned musician, composer, conductor, and arranger, and a veteran member of the Wynton Marsalis Septet, an original member of the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. Gordon's arrangement of theme song to NPR's All Things Considered is heard daily across the globe. The world-famous Apollo Theater celebrated 75 years by commissioning Gordon as the musical director and composer of a new work that premiered May 2011. American mezzo-soprano Janae Bridges, known for her rich, dark, exciting sound, as described by Offer News, is quickly becoming one of the most sought-after talents of her generation. Janae Bridges has been heralded as a rising star by the Los Angeles Times, gracing the world's top stages. Her 2019-2020 operatic engagements in the U.S. this season include her debut at the Metropolitan Opera, singing the role of Nefertiti in Philip Glass's opera Akhenaten, and her house and role debut at Washington National Opera performing Delilah and Samson and Delilah. And Nathan Nelson is the director of the Low Country Voices. Low Country Voices performs all genres of music with an emphasis on African American music performed in the South Carolina Low Country tradition. It shares the musical flavor of the Low Country throughout the United States and internationally. Founding director Nathan L. Nelson has a passion for preserving the cultural legacy and authenticity of African American music. A native Charlestonian, Nelson has conducted in England and Africa and mesmerized sold-out audiences throughout. So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. I was going to
thank you for having us.
if you all wanted to introduce yourselves and say hello.
I'm Janae Bridges, as Kellie mentioned, and I'm very happy to be on this call. You know, I think it's a very helpful tool that we are doing this just for these times right now. So I'm grateful to be a part of it.
I'm Wycliffe Gordon, and ditto to what Janae said. I feel the same way when I went back to look at this, to view it again, and just looked at the words and the order of the program. I think everything that we did, the program is kind of timeless, and I'm hoping at some, in some way, shape, or form, for the show to get legs, to perform it again there at the Gaillard Center. Now that, you know, once you get one under your belt, and it's like, yes, we can do this and we can do that. But anyway, I'm excited about just sharing, answering questions. So thank you for having me.
And I'm Nathan Nelson, and I am also excited to be here and to say hello to Wycliffe and Janae again. The body of work that we did, the concert was a phenomenal experience for not only for myself, but for our singers, Low Country Voices. And so thank you to the Gaillard for this opportunity and for this platform to share.
Well, thank you all so much. So just, we're gonna open the Zoom for questions. Please, just a few housekeeping items. Please be patient as we let participants ask questions. Also, I see a lot of people already on mute, which is wonderful. So if you unmute yourself to ask a question, but if you aren't speaking, if you would keep yourself on mute so there aren't any background noises. I've got 2 dogs running around, so I'm gonna try to keep myself muted. But I think we will open it up to questions. You want me to call
Well,
on
let me jump in right off. I'm Jason Nichols, and I produced this for the Gaillard. And this question is for the artistic director and composer, Wycliffe Gordon. Wycliffe, when we first asked you to do this, what was it that caught your musical imagination?
Well, what caught my musical imagination was several things. The content, and when you told me about the slave dwelling project, and in the spirit of collaboration in which many great things are formed, I said, wow, I was captivated by the content, because I always want to have a voice in telling that story. And, you know, the whole thing behind the Prince and Clay, you shared that poem with me. I read that poem, and you think about things historically, but you kind of put it in another context when you start talking about children. So as I met with Janae and, you know, talk with Nathan before, or the musical director, which I think Nathan is, but I spoke with someone that does the business for the Low Country Voices. I began to formulate in my mind how we could all come together to tell the story, because one perspective from, you know, that whole journey from to the slave dwelling projects. And I was always thinking about what has happened, what is happening, and what can happen. So I was excited about the content, even though some of it is sad. When you say still we rise, still I rise. And you know, Janae kind of came up with that title, and we kind of went back and forth with it. But I'm like, you know, I like it, and it speaks to the issues that existed before. But as you stated earlier, it speaks to the issues that exist now, rising above the diversity that we have in front of us. So, you know, the Prince and Clay, the children, and I'm always about the children. When I read a line in that poem, which I don't have in front of me right now, but I wanted to make sure that it was in the program. When you say something about the children's hand in clay, meaning they were, you know, slave children, it's like they were born into slavery, they grew up in slavery, and these dwellings that have their fingerprints, because they were making the bricks that they built the slave dwellings with. So I was just immediately captivated by that, and I always feel that there's a song when I can't find the words, but that's what initially got me interested in the project.
Thank you.
I have a question. This question is for Ms. Bridges. First of all, congratulations on your debut at the Metropolitan Opera.
Thank you.
That's amazing. My question is that, so you've performed in a couple of modern operas this past season and a couple of traditional operas. So what are the unique differences in performing roles in both of those style of operas?
That's a great question. Well, I'll start off by saying how they're similar, and that is that I am able to, you know, look at the character that I'm playing and put myself into it. So whatever role that I'm playing, you know, it's imagined by the composer. It's first imagined by the composer. So, you know, I take that into account. But when I have to put myself into a role, I ask myself, okay, what would Janae do? So that's the first thing that I do in both, you know, styles. But I would say the biggest difference is that with new music, I've often premiered a lot of new roles. And so there isn't the preconceived kind of idea of how it's supposed to go. So for me, I feel like I have more liberties that I'm able to take. And I really enjoy that because I can really, obviously stay true to what the composer writes in terms of tempi and dynamics and everything, but it's really more of a collaborative experience. And that's something that I just really enjoy in general. But premiering new works gives me that opportunity to really have that collaborative experience with the conductor, with the composer, because most of them are living still. And we were able to create something to the liking of everybody and that's involved into the project. And for me, I think that is the most special way to create, because everybody can bring their best foot forward, and it's not like you're being necessarily like kind of boxed in a way, if I can say that. Now, that's not to say that I don't love singing more classical works. I love it. I just sang Samson and Delilah at Washington National Opera, and this is a opera that's been performed for 100 years, and it's in my opinion, it doesn't need any correcting. It is the perfect score. But at the same time, I have to put myself into that work and sing it like I, want to interpret it and want people to gather their own opinion on, it's kind of like also a new work, even though it's been around for 100 years, it is new because I'm bringing myself into it. So I think if I had to answer that question in a more concise way, I think the biggest difference is that with new music and newer premieres, I am able to create in a way that is just more free, if that makes sense, because people don't have expectations. Really, it sounds funny to say that, but it's actually kind of true.
Thank you.
But
very much.
I enjoy both equally. I really do.
Yeah, and so you find that you can bring more of your own personality, if you will, to the modern roles?
I think so, only because it's easier for me to, most of the stories that are modern, we can easily connect to today. Although a lot of opera stories are very timeless, but working with like a living composer, it's just a different experience where you can directly like relate the story to what we're going through today. So if I had to choose, I mean, it's really hard to choose, actually. They're so different. So I don't want to choose, but I really just enjoy the process of creating something new. I hope that answers your question.
Wonderfully. Thank you very much.
Thank
I've
you.
got one for Nathan. In Prince and Clay, I really liked the contribution of Low Country Voices. So
Thank you.
why, yeah, it was awesome. So why do you think the contribution of Low Country Voices in particular works so well with the program in particular, the material of Prince and Clay?
Well, one, Wycliffe did a phenomenal job scoring the music, and two, Low Country Voices has always worked on really preserving the culture here in the Low Country. There is a difference in the Low Country sound, but yet we're still connected to New Orleans and Georgia and other states here in the South. And so the collaboration as far as the programming and Jason's thought of what that should be with Prince and Clay kind of really just worked well with what we do as an organization. So I think one, the compositions also worked well with our choir. It was quite unique for us to get something that had never really been done, and to have the opportunity to work with Wycliffe and what he was thinking, and have myself take some liberties stylistically in what Charleston would have been accustomed to, and so it worked very well with the choir. And I'm godly proud of Low Country Voices. They are always up to the challenge, whether it's a Bach piece or a Wycliffe Gordon piece, they received it well. So that was very rewarding for me as a music director.
Awesome. I think it also interestingly goes back to today's point about working with living composers and doing modern works. When she just answered her question, and then you kind of echoed that as well, and working with Wycliffe and being able to do something new, do with this piece.
And I think that's one of the great things about music. One is that although we love composers like Handel and Mozart and those individuals, we still have people who are still putting out new music, and you still get to speak directly to those composers. With Bach and other composers, you have to kind of go and study or go in and leave it up to your own interpretation of what somebody else has done. But with a new piece that the composer is still here, you both get to shoot ideas off, and he could either take it or not take it. But you're creating something new that the audience has never heard, and you are like the new bar. So you're setting the bar for that piece, and so that's always rewarding.
And Mr. Nelson, someone did chat us asking what you are focusing on for the next year. So that question is from JJ.
Okay. Well, this time of quarantine, it has been quite valuable to me as a musician. We are currently working on a piece with Charleston Jazz Orchestra, I believe, and it is bringing the Gullah sound with horns and instrumentation to what we in the, not just African-American churches, but just churches in general in the South, what we would have heard in those churches with instrumentations to jazz. So we were fortunate enough to also do Duke Ellington's Sacred Songs, Sacred Concert at the Gaillard with a jazz ensemble. And so we're now working with the Jazz Orchestra. We will continue to be about social justice and social change. Next year, we added a new MLK concert because the concert that we were doing was overcapacitated. And so we have now the opportunity to continue to bring this nation together. And so that's what we're working on. Hopefully we will put out a project that we've been working on for some time and get that released next season. So we're fingers crossed for that.
So you do have a beautiful, formerly classically trained voice. So when you were asked to take on this performance that had you improvising in gospel and jazz and Gullah dialect, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I first of all, when I was offered this project, I immediately was so excited because I have been wanting to cross-collaborate with different genres of music. Mm-hmm. And Wycliffe Gordon has been such an inspiration since I can remember. So the fact that this opportunity was even first presented, I just was, very excited about it. But also, I didn't actually know so much about the Gullah culture. I knew a little bit, just from like growing up in a Black family, but my parents are not, my mother's from Baltimore and my dad is from Georgia. So it's just, we weren't raised on that culture, and I grew up in Seattle. So the opportunity to learn more about the Gullah people and the music was just something that completely interested me, and the music that is so deeply rooted in the African-American culture where other genres of music have been born. For me, that is just so fascinating, and so it instantly piqued my interest. Yeah, does that answer?
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
What's that?
No, I was just gonna add.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, it was great. I didn't know much about I know a little bit about the Gullah culture because I've performed and I have in Charleston, Hilton Head Island. And I've heard about it, and I know about the artist from Charleston, Jonathan Green, I think, and I got a chance to hear some of the music, but every time I drive between Georgia and Charleston, or I did some gig around Christmas time, and just got a chance to stop there and see that and realize that I have the family that's just kind of steeped in that culture at Charlton. Singleton, who the group, another group from Charleston
Great,
came
thank
here. They came in and did a show at my school, and they shared some of that with our students. And the thing that was so great about it was what I got a chance to learn musically, coming from musicians that I did not know. And one of the great things about working with Janae and working with Nathan. Nathan was talking about what the choir is doing coming up, and I can say without a doubt, there's nothing more glorious than the sound of the human voice. And so once I heard the voice, and I met Janae, and we met in New York to just talk about songs, just wrote down songs, and what about this? And then I said, well, I'd like to just hear her sing in another setting, and invited her to a gig at Dizzy's to not play jazz, sing jazz, but to sing however she wanted to sing. And I saw an opportunity. I'm sitting here looking at this list of songs, like at the end of the first set, the first half of the program, where Janae did a classical version of Ride On King Jesus with Paul Sanchez, one that I'd never heard before. And I was like, man, that's great. And I'm like, it was wonderful. And then to hear the traditional version that was still, it's kind of modern, but what has become a tradition or a standard in gospel music, the Low Country Voice is doing that. And there's certain moments in the show that I just had to sit still, and I watched myself on the program, and I would kind of, tear up at first of all, the coming together of the artistry, but the coming together of what it means that what we're talking about. Yes, it's something that's very difficult, because when you really get into the Gullah culture and what happened with the folks in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and Kiowa Island, and when you learn that history, and it's kind of like Prince and Clay, but the beauty that comes from it, and that's where the music comes in. So this collaboration, just in general, was just like, we have a classical voice. I don't want to stretch her, for lack of a better term, but I knew that Janae had other stuff. And then the Low Country Voices, I said, they had, I said, this is like a perfect marriage of, I would say, three things, but it's much more than that, because a lot of things are intertwined. So I'm still learning about that culture, and it's great. So I'm glad to hear that the Low Country Voices and Charleston Jazz Orchestra, I know it's going to be great, because Charlton's Singleton is so steeped. He's like the epitome of that. And so anyway, sorry, I just had to jump in there.
Charlton and I, with Low Country Voices, we do a Christmas concert every year that still plays off of the Gullah tradition for Christmas and what we would do in churches here in the Low Country. But to Wycliffe, to add to what Wycliffe said, it was also just good to hear not just the Gullah tradition, but jazz and blues and classical repertoire with Janai. So it was very, very well-rounded program. I think that the team did a very good job on representing that concert.
So do I. It was
Sorry, I just wanted to tag on and say that, and for me, like it stretched me, which is always what I'm looking for, just as a musician, to take my artistry to the next level. And so working with Wycliffe and Nathan and the Low Country Voices, it did just that. And I found, I'm still finding kind of this hybrid sound that I'm calling my own, of classical and jazz and gospel, because I think that the musical styles are actually not so far apart. And for what I've actually discovered in this isolation is that I'm really interested in just kind of bringing them all together more and adding that to my performance. So it was a really special occasion, because I was able to start that process.
That's great. I love to hear that. Thank you all for the answer.
Welcome.
So can I speak a little bit more about the Gullah tradition?
Absolutely.
Here in the Low Country. Of course, the music is one of the great benefits when you talk about Prince and Clay. The music is just one of the great benefits of the Gullah culture, but the food and the artwork and, you know, all of the living and tradition that I was brought up on, it's moved also just beyond a race, even though we know that the African American race kind of brought that tradition over, but there are Caucasians out in Johns Island and James Island. If you closed your eyes, you wouldn't know who was speaking. So that whole tradition just coming together as a melting pot for the Prince and Clay, sitting down at grandmother's kitchen every Sunday and getting some of that good cooking. Just really, that whole program just really came to light. Jonathan Green, who's a dear friend of mine, does a good job with telling the story of the Gullah culture through his artwork. And I'm so happy that Charlton and his group, Ranky Tanky, continues to spread nationally what we do here in the Low Country. But my hat is also off to the Gaillard, because you guys have been very consistent with telling the story of the Low Country and bringing in artists who are world-class artists like Janai and Wycliffe and so many others, and making sure that we tell the story. I forgot Bobby McFerrin and Ranky Tanky did a concert at the Gaillard that kind of also blended the jazz as well as the Gullah traditions into one thing. And so I'm so happy for this culture. I'm so happy for the music, but for the artistry of what the Gullah culture represents. And so thank you to the Gaillard for continuing to do that work.
Yes, Jason, I'll jump in real quickly before we get any more of those crazy phone calls. And I don't want to take any time for anyone's questions, but that's the one thing that I did miss. I'm so glad that you all are safe and that hopefully you weren't too affected by that hurricane that happened in September 2018 and we had to move the concert. And unfortunately, I missed the food. I mean, and the gentleman that did the book on Prince and Clay, that was kind of like the nucleus of all this coming together. I really missed that, and because of everyone's schedule, of course, we had to reschedule when the musicians could do it, when the lady that was presenting the African cuisine, and I was really looking forward to that. So hopefully we get a chance to do it again, and I know that we edited the video some, and you know, again, we had one show, and I was like, oh wow, just I would love to do it again. That's it.
And I second that motion. I would love to.
I think it'll be great. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I think Janae, you answered it. Just interested, you know, in your vocal training. I mean, I know you said that, you know, you actively try to, you know, find your own kind of sweet spot between, you know, classical, gospel, and jazz. I was just curious, you know, how the training is differently vocally.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I really haven't trained in jazz and gospel. I wouldn't, I mean, I grew up in the church, in the AME church, so you can say that was just an kind of a training that was ingrained. But classical training is so different in that, you know, I sing in different languages, so that's one thing. Many years of studying different languages, the Romantic languages, and it's just a different, you kind of sing in a different place. So getting comfortable with those different places, it just takes a lot of practice. And merging all of them is just, that's something that I'm still trying to figure out. I don't think that there's not one way to do it, you know, it's just how it works for me and for whoever's trying to do it. But the biggest difference with training classically is that it's so hyper-focused on the different languages, and it's just like technically a different space where you sing, because we're unamplified when you sing opera and classical music. So it comes from a whole different place, like mechanically. But at the end of the day, it's all about feeling, because the voice isn't a tangible instrument. So you can't, you know, take it out and press different keys. So you have to go off of feeling, and also the sound isn't necessarily the same. What I hear is different than what you hear. So it really, that even more so, you know, you have to go off of feeling. So it's discovering what the best feeling is, and not necessarily listening to yourself so much. It's just like going with the feeling and kind of the natural, it's so hard to articulate actually sometimes, but the natural good feeling.
I think a good thing to check out would be the TikTok video that Janae made with her, with some of her soprano friends, your opera friend. It was funny because sometimes, look, I like to laugh, and sometimes it's difficult. It's much easier for me to express myself with music or being silly or doing something that can emote what I'm feeling than to find the words to do so. And I think that was just, it was funny. You should send it to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on all of my social media. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we are running out of time. So I just wanted to check back in with Mr. Gordon, Ms. Bridges, and Mr. Nelson and see if you had any final thoughts to share with the group.
Ms. Bridges?
Oh, I'm just, again, very grateful for this opportunity, and to also just go back in time to this wonderful occasion that we were all able to meet and make music together. It definitely sparked just something new in me, and I'm definitely excited about what the future holds in terms of collaborating with these amazing musicians again. And yeah, thank you again.
I just wanted to say to everyone watching to make sure it's going to be even more important now than ever before for us to support the arts. So when you have wonderful presentations coming to your town, take time and spend that money to enjoy such wonderful talent, because as artists, what you see in that 90-minute concert, there's so much that goes behind the scenes, from the marketing, from the press, to the rehearsals, to choir members taking off and volunteering their time weekly to be a part of such a wonderful experience to share with the audience, especially now that we're going into this new world of what does social distancing look like. But when we do have the opportunity to get back out and share those gifts, I really would like to challenge our community to continue to support the Gaillard and Ms. Bridges and Mr. Gordon. Wherever you see an artist that come to your town, take the time to support them, because it is more than just a performance. It's the opportunity for human interaction. So kudos to you guys for continuing this legacy.
Thanks, Nathan, and thanks, Janae. For me, I want to see it happen again. Jason, I'm so glad that when I first talked with you, I said, are we going to document this? And we do have a document. I don't think we had a 4 or 5 camera shoot and calling shots and that type of thing, but we do have something that folks can see. And because of it, from other projects that I've done, when you have that as a music director or an artist, it helps to formulate. Like I said, we got the one show done, and it was great and it was beautiful. There's a few things I would probably have done differently, but I think if we get the opportunity to do it again, we couldn't have the whole world there the night that we performed, but this message, Still We Rise, like you said, Jason, before we got on the call earlier, that's what we're dealing with right now. I mean, you know, we're in a mess, and there will always be foolishness going on in the world. And by no means, I'm sure no one's going to do this. Don't drink any Lysol. But I'd like to see this program happen again. I want to thank the Gaillard Center for having the gumption to put it on. It's kind of big project. I don't know what happened when the storm came through. It changed everything. So now the one thing that happened in the culmination of a week now had to take place at 3 different times, or at least at 2 different times. We didn't get a chance to be a part of that collaboration, but I'm so thankful that we do have an audio and visual copy of this. I'd love to see the show happen again, whether it's at the Gaillard. No matter where we do it, I will always remember it being birthed there in the city of Charleston, and it'll have that, you know, the feeling that came out of that night. So I would love to see it happen again, but also we can't do it everywhere. Let's try to figure out a way to document it. I'm on board. I'd like to figure out a way to make it happen because we got the Low Country voices. I mean, a full choir, and Janae Bridges. And watch the video. When I'm sitting on stage, I am absolutely excited. I'm just listening. Don't listen to me when I'm playing. Watch me when I'm not playing, because that's when I'm really, I'm really into the music. So that's just my spiel. I hope that we can do it again, and some way, some shape, some form, to do this show again with the 3 entities, that are here. That's it.
Be fun.
Awesome. Well, that's it. We're going to end today. Thank you so much for engaging in this conversation about Prince and Clay. We're grateful to Wycliffe Gordon, Nathan Nelson, and Janae Bridges for giving their time for us today. On behalf of the Gaillard, thank you for all of our guests. The performance video will still be available on our YouTube page. You can check that out at gaillardcenter.org. And then if you have any additional questions about the Gaillard Center, our programming, you can reach out to us at info@gaillardcenter.org. We hope you visit our site. We have a lot of wonderful educational programming that we've been pushing out while our students and teachers are unfortunately home, but we are sharing as much content as possible. And also, please consider a donation as our nonprofit continues to find innovative ways to connect, to inspire, and to entertain. So thank you all. I hope you have a beautiful weekend, and thanks for the wonderful Friday.
Their